I appreciate you and your time for coming here because unpacking the elephant in the room, that is going to be what the thumbnail said. You, in 9 short months, like the start of this year so far, have crossed now a six-figure marker of 100,000 in sales, and you did it outside of Q4, which is huge. You've already hit the six-figure marker. So let's start like right at the beginning and just tearing off this band-aid and say, like, how does that feel?
It's good. I feel like success is almost better anticipated than experienced sometimes because once you've done something that you like, there's always the possibility of losing it. Like you have to, there's the weight of maintaining it. And if you've got nothing to lose, then there's nothing to lose. But once you get things going, you don't always know how to keep them going.
That's that brings me back to something that Em actually said on one of our calls inside the inner circle. And she said that what I thought was going to happen once I started growing was that there was going to be all this more immense amount of work when really it's just repeating what's already working and doing more of the same. So it sounds like this is true in your case as well, but also it's almost in a way surreal. Like you almost feel like this could be ripped away from you at any point. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I've built other businesses in the past and they followed a very predictable sort of trajectory where the amount of effort that I put in came out the other end and that grew over time and it was very somehow predictable and it was very obvious what was going on and what was make the cause and effect. And this is much more ethereal.
Okay. Wow. So what kind of things do you think would impact something like this? Like other than obviously the economic uncertainty that, is kind of plaguing everybody globally, really. What is it about this that seems, I guess, more fluid and less predictable?
Before I had inventory for one, and I knew when I had something that would sell well. And now there's so much more reliance on what people like. It's like a kind of a fickle trend thing that, like, the one shirt that, or the one design that sort of kicked things off and started the success that I've had. This people aren't going to love one thing forever. And so to try, and that doesn't mean that the next thing that you make people will like just as much.
That's so true. And that's probably one of the biggest slaps in the face I had because I thought I created something that was amazing. Nobody wanted it. Then I created something that everybody wanted. Then I created a second version of it and nobody wanted that.
Wow.
So yeah, live and learn. But I think that comes part and parcel with what we're doing is capitalizing, like in what you're saying, is staying on top of some kind of aesthetic trend. Everything that is ultimately evergreen has a finite shelf life. Nothing is going to be quote unquote evergreen forever. You mentioned you had started business before, so let's backtrack this a little bit. And what were you doing, before your Etsy and Shopify journey? What were you doing before any of this stuff?
Well, I sold semi-precious stone beads. I sold jewelry supplies.
Cool.
And like with that, you develop an eye for what will sell and what is unique. And you buy what you can. I mean, I wasn't creating it. I guess I wasn't creating any of that. And I, over time, learned what was special and what would sell and what quality was. And hopefully I'll also develop that same eye maybe for shirts. I don't know if there is such a eye to be developed, but yeah, I did. And then in 2008, that fell apart. It went under with everything else. And I did some other stuff. And then I started up a variation on the same stone idea. Instead of bulk, I did quality.
To me, that's taking a page out of the playbook, right? It's quality over quantity for sure. But what were you selling this on? Was this like a brick and mortar? Was this e-commerce?
No, I sold most of it. I had a website and I sold a lot of it on eBay. For the quantity business was on eBay. And then after that, I sold on Etsy
Nice.
in their supplies area.
Question, because I think people are going to wonder this. What do you think are the major differences between eBay and Etsy? I know you spoke about quantity just now. Do you feel like there's a definite different caliber of customer on each of those respective platforms?
Yes, there's people on eBay are looking for something cheap. And that's what I was doing with the first round of stones. It was just quantity and low price. Gosh, I started that a long time ago. It was like 2001.
Wow.
And I don't know that I could do the same thing again because now you can ship stuff. Well, I don't know about now, but then you could ship stuff directly from China, which is where I was buying a lot of it from China and India. And now you can buy from the people that I would buy from.
Right. Okay. So what got you into Etsy from eBay?
It was because there was a higher quality of customer. They were looking for something more specific. I was surprised that people wanted to buy supplies off of Etsy, but they did. And so instead of, selling 100 strands in one listing, I would sell one nice one.
For a lot more margins, higher margin,
Yeah.
a lot more profit. Yeah, that's awesome. So then I guess what, 20 years of e-commerce selling, and then all of a sudden you're what, getting into print on demand now?
Well, we have an Airbnb that
Okay.
we do, and some licensing in the city changed, and I thought we might lose one of our Airbnbs, so we started boarding dogs, which was a blast. But after a few years, it's gotten to be a lot, and I was like, we wanted to move, actually going on to move to Italy. And I was like, well, I can't keep doing inventory. We can't do service businesses and we can't do inventory-based businesses. So I have to find something else that I can take with me. We had gone to Italy for 4 months before, and I took all my inventory with me and shipped it from there earlier. But I was like, yeah, I'm not going to do that again.
A lot. Yeah, holy crap. I was just gonna say
Because it
like
was more
case
expensive. The more
cases
expensive
easy.
stuff is smaller. And so it
Yeah.
could fit in a suitcase, but then it was a very expensive suit, it had like a whole business worth of inventory.
So print on demand, night and day, a dream.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. How long ago did you start print on demand, and where were you kind of before joining the inner circle?
I started basically in August of 2024, and I started with some dog stuff because obviously I love dogs, but I was also doing some election stuff.
Yeah.
And as I was doing, and that really, I got a little bit of traction right away. I had a good design and it was doing well, but I just kept saying, like, this isn't going to last. And I didn't know what to do next. And I joined the inner circle in September.
Wow. So like literally a month later.
Yeah,
All
actually,
right.
yeah. Because, the election stuff was already dropping off. And so it was time to really figure out how to do this.
Well, I'm flattered that you decided to join the inner circle, of course, and you've been such help and inspiring for so many people in there too. And it's just really awesome to have you. You're just a good human, so it's
Oh,
it's
thank
awesome,
you.
right? I think we're attracting the right kind of people. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
So in the past 9 months, what would you think shifted or changed? How did you go about your business? So political stuff is tanking. What made you decide to go all in on dogs? How many products were you selling? I know you were selling like a lot of different items at one point, right?
Actually, not too many. Well, you had said you got to pick. You can't do all of these things. Do two separate stores if you want it, but mostly just pick something and stay with it. Although the political stuff was tempting, I knew that I couldn't do it long term. So I, of course, went the dog route. And I was making some stuff that I liked, and it sold okay. I had a good December. There were a few things that I made that were good, but nothing was really gaining much traction. And after Q4, January was abysmal. It was really bad. And I had lots of new designs. I didn't know, what to do. And actually what I tried to do was take styles that didn't really seem to make sense for my niche and cram them together and try to figure out a way to do that differently. And I had, a couple things that sort of got a little bit more attention. And then I made one design that sort of started the whole thing.
Nice. And then at that point, you're like, you double down, go all in. Was that whereabouts in that journey was that? Was that in like January then? Like the end of January?
Yeah. Yeah. It
Okay.
was all January. I just like threw stuff together. I really just tried different styles in sort of groups. And one of them started to sort of seem to resonate. And then since then, I have not made anything else.
I got to say that no, it is awesome because you're doing more of what works and you're not reinventing the wheel every time and you're not getting shiny object syndrome and getting distracted. Yes, maybe you are, but you're, reining yourself in. At that point, there comes, a time where you feel like, yeah, I can scale this. Should I add more products? For me, I've always kind of looked at it like sort of like an hourglass, right? So you can start kind of broad to figure out what works, but then really narrow that in. And then once you've got that on lock, you can then start going laterally. You can add now from your t-shirts, you can add your sweatshirts, your hoodies, your whatever that makes sense for the same ideal customers ultimately to get, multiple item orders, right? What have you added anything else to other than the shirts yet?
Well, I was doing shirts and sweatshirts, but the sweatshirts were just kind of like I don't have a lot of mock-ups for them. There's a color card for them, and it's an option that you can select. But I've mainly focused on t-shirts. I've started to try and add hoodies just in the last month or two, and that's been okay. I did do a couple of travel mugs. I couldn't help myself. But it's totally different, and I sold a few, but it's so different than what I've been doing that it would be like starting a whole new business to do it.
I love that you say that because now that kind of makes sense, right? Now you understand what works, and then adding a completely new product is also the designs are a little different. You're not just taking the same stuff, right? You have to consider the shape, the wrap, the colors, the substrate you're printing on. All of those things kind of go into all the decisions we make if you are being intentional about it. So you're making sales in January, starting. You got the one that's kind of popping off. Is there a point that it starts to pick up where you're like, I can scale this. I know I can blow this up?
It was really February. I was like, wow, I'm making more. And I just sat down and made more of the same, basically more of the same thing. Doug's doing different stuff, but everything looks the same. It's all done in the same style. There's maybe a tiny bit of variation, but it's really all the same thing over and over again.
So what kind of numbers, if you're okay with sharing, what were we talking about? Like when you say January was abysmal, what does February look like now?
January, I sold like $1,500 worth of stuff.
Okay.
And February was about 3,000.
Okay.
And then March was 9.
Wow.
April was 10, and May was 13, and June was 13. And it was just nuts.
Yeah, nuts is a good way to describe it. That is absolutely incredible. So not only did you go from like in after the first quarter, so second quarter hits, you're already doing five figures a month.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that until right now. I know you would share, in our wins kind of post, but I didn't realize it had grown that significantly that quick. That's pretty special. That said, would you say that there's a role that the community had in keeping the momentum going for you or helping you that way without getting overwhelmed?
Definitely. For one, because there was a place that I could go to ask real questions about, what I should do next. Does this look like it's something that I would make or that you would find in my store? Or, somebody complained about this or this was a problem. What should I do? Or should I, start doing travel mugs? Or and just the support of everybody in there is amazing.
Something that kind of get criticized a bit for, or at least I had in the past, not so much now with everybody inside because you know what you're getting from me. I'll shoot you straight that way. But like one thing I know is that I'll give you a definitive answer. It's like it's never like going to be, tune in next week. So maybe we'll, it's I'll tell you yes or no my thoughts, right? But again, it's what I know has worked for me, and it's going based on my own experience. Doesn't mean if you do the opposite that it can't work. It's just, it's what I know. But I've also been told that I can be a little abrasive, and I try, to make things come from a good place, but I'm gonna shoot you straight, and that's just the bottom line. Like I'm not going to stroke egos because we're just wasting everybody's time. I'm all about encouraging everybody, but the right way, if that makes sense. So I'm just grateful that you haven't felt any of that, right?
I'm shocked to hear it, honestly. I mean, for one, like I'm not a designer. I always used to say I'm right brain dead. Like I can't, the creative side of things has never been my forte. And so, which is part of what was so appealing about your group was you, because you are an artist and you've been successful with making things and designing things, and you have a very experienced eye. Look, how many shirts have you looked at? Like I've looked at zillions of stones. How many shirts have I looked at? Not so many. And so that experience is incredibly valuable.
I probably have seen zillions of shirts.
And you develop it becomes a skilled eye. And if you don't have that, all you can do is look at a lot of things and ask people who have what makes this good and what makes this bad and what's wrong with, because when something's wrong with it, but you don't know what it is. And so having a resource to be able to ask, like, what's wrong with this, or why is it ugly, or why is it good? How can I do it again? What is it that's carrying this so I can do it in something else is amazing.
That's awesome because that's something that is super important, right? It's not just taking, like one of the designs we looked at today on the call previous to this was, for those of you watching, we do a design hot seats where I'll take your design and reconstruct it for you and make it into ultimately, ideally something that'll sell. It's like one of those social club designs, right? But we have to analyze why that aesthetic works. So it's taking something that was in this case, a full color image and then dumbing it down into something that is monochromatic or a single solitary color. All the little whys behind the hows ultimately, right, is what I think more people need to digest. And that only comes with, having somebody tell you the whys but then you digesting it and doing it over and over. And then, eventually you're going to start to see patterns. You're going to understand why things work. That's at least what I feel like my job is to help with, right? Is giving you the whys behind the house. Would you say that there's any light bulb moments then from previous design calls or anything like that that kind of stuck with you or changed maybe how you approach creating for your Etsy shop?
There was. I actually was you had done a shop review of mine, and you had pointed out that there was a mix of different aesthetics because it was right as things were sort of starting to take off, and so I had a lump of designs that look like designs I sell now and a lump that didn't. And you were like, these look like they come from two different stores. And I also was really concerned about like having very similar mock-ups for everything. Everything showed the same color mock-up, the same color shirt, the same color design. And you were like, no, that's just right. That looks unified. It's okay to do it that way. You don't and realize that you really need like be that specific with the aesthetic for what I'm doing, and that it's not a mistake, and it doesn't appear repetitive. It highlights the aesthetic of the whole thing.
I think a big misnomer, right, is that everybody thinks they have to do all these crazy things when really like you want it to appeal to that same ideal customer, that same shopper over and over. And if you're going to have a mishmash of all kinds of different looks and aesthetics, then that same person is probably not going to be buying more than, one or two items. Yeah, it's a good takeaway. Can we talk about a little bit of your the processes and habits now? I know we have Mark in the group, which is amazing. He's just a guru when it comes to automations and digitals. I know you've recently included some automations in your workflow. So what does your workflow look like now? Is it like research, design, and then list? And has it evolved, if at all, from where you were prior to joining the inner circle?
It's evolved a lot. I know it's terrible to say. I don't do a lot of research.
Not terrible to say at all.
I don't want to see what other people are doing. I will take it personally,
Mhm.
or just it doesn't work very well for me. I spend a lot of time trying to think up ideas of what I want to do next. That's where instead of doing research, I just will talk to Chat GPT and will go running and try and think of something. But also I was spending a lot of time doing mock-ups and doing all of this stuff. And Mark had said during one of his automation calls that by automating all of this stuff, he made room in his schedule and in his life for other things. And there was a light bulb about, oh, if I automate all this stuff, then I can do Shopify, or I can add in something in addition to Etsy because I'll have room for it because Etsy was full time. And so I was able to automate basically the whole mock-up process and made room for other things. Like I can come up with a lot of ideas for what I want to make, and it doesn't translate. So I have to come up with maybe 10 different things before I can find one that will actually sort of have an emotional appeal to the design in the end. Like, dogs gardening is impossible for me to make. I can't. I want to. I've tried 100 times and it doesn't translate for the style of what I do. So I found other things, and then I get all of the different designs together, and then I run it through that process, and I get all of the mock-ups and all of the designs converted, and then I have to do all the listings.
There's always something, that's the bane of everyone's existence, right?
That
Um,
that's next in the automation list.
but that's awesome. That I was just gonna say that's, figure outable, right? You can definitely figure out an automation for that, and Mark will be happy, I'm sure, to help on that end. You mentioned something there, not getting influenced visually, I think was a big one. My wife Stacy does a lot of dog stuff, as you know, and she is the same. She doesn't browse Etsy, she doesn't browse Shopify or Amazon for any kind of design inspiration. She'll go to town and think of different things that I guess that speak to her in her life with having, our giant breed dogs. Just the things that people say on your walk all the time. Does he have a saddle? One of her best-selling shirts was "No, I don't have a saddle," or "No, it doesn't come
Yeah.
with a saddle." That was like her first shirt, and it's gone crazy. Sold thousands of it on Amazon. And just those kinds of things. And then she'll also do the same, like with ChatGPT now or AI. Just ask it for some kind of ideas how to spin these into funny, maybe make something with a little more alliteration or something that rolls off the tongue or something a little more punny. But yeah, it's a cool idea because a lot of people, I mean, it's one thing to take inspiration from what's out there, but it's another, a lot of people end up towing the line of just basically copycatting. And I think that's going to hold you back, right? Is chasing trends and other people's best sellers. If you're not bringing some kind of unique value to this, it's not going to work. You're never going to be the best seller. You're always going to be riding coattails and second best, right? And that kind of sucks. But yeah, I love that you're not taking visual cues really from, what's out there. I mean, I'm sure you have some stuff, ideas in your head when you're kind of composing stuff, but
And
I
I
like
do,
it.
the trend reports are really valuable in that, where so that I don't have to go look at other dog shirts, but I can get a concept of what is happening, what people are looking at.
That's also good to know.
And that way also I can look to see if any of them, because the style, the aesthetic that I'm doing well with now won't be popular forever. There will be a time where I need to sort of readjust that whole thing. And so knowing what people are interested in always gives me an idea to try that I can try and, stuff these two things that don't go together again, like the
Isn't
trend and the dog.
Yeah, I think that's like pretty much the MO for success in general, right? Is like mashing up two things that make sense and having it go together in a unique way to stay kind of relevant ultimately. Like dogs, funny dog shirts will never go out of style, but maybe the aesthetic will, maybe the color trends will. So I think it's super important to stay abreast of like, what's coming down the pipe that way. We talked a little bit about, your efficiencies with automations and stuff. Is there any because people out there want to know, right? Because we all talk about, Etsy, there's no monthly fee and it's very cheap to get into. It's an easy one. And then you have the Shopify, which we'll talk a little bit about later. But then that has fees associated with ads and stuff. So like, there isn't really this zero cost business model, right? Ultimately. So that said, what tools are you using right now? As far as design tools, would you say any of them are free?
I dabbled and I used different things for different things, which has become somewhat unnecessary as I've honed things down. I use a lot of Chat GPT for ideas. A lot of times I'll I'll have AI make different elements and then I'll put them together separately because they just don't come together very well. Lately, I've been using Photoshop to do a lot of putting together. I was doing most of it in Kittle, but because I don't put any text in my shirts as well, it's really just graphic. And so I don't need all of the text manipulation ability but for no particular reason. And I was using Canva to do all of my mock-ups before just because. Now that it's automated, I use Inkscape to do all of the mock-up generation stuff. And I use an online vectorizer. That's it. I mean, I really don't use a lot of tools anymore.
So is that vectorizer.ai?
I mistyped, I think, and I use vectorizer.io.
Okay, that's funny, but it's
Same
working.
idea.
Works for you.
Yeah.
And is that free?
No, I think it's $10 a month, maybe.
Okay, so not outrageous. And then what was it, Inkscape? Is that what's the cost associated there?
Inkscape is free.
Awesome.
It's bizarre. I don't really know how to use it, but my JavaScript does, and so it gets used.
This is a great segue onto another point because I remember when you were, we were all blown away with Mark's automations, and then it's like, how can I do this? And you had serious problems, figuring it out on your own, and then you had an amazing solution. Can you just tell us what that solution was?
I just asked ChatGPT.
Right? And to what extent, like, right, make this work?
Well, I said, this is what I want to do. Can you help me do that? And it was like, sure, of course. And it was a really long, frustrating process. And I've learned more about it so that I'm better at asking ChatGPT to do it. I still can't write the scripts that I use, but I can edit them a little bit and I understand them a little bit more. It's not the best way to do it, to have the black box, better to understand what's happening in there. But I've made it work. And then when I needed to expand on it, I was able to say, this script that we made does this, and now I needed to do something different. So make the changes in there.
I like I like you say that because it's like I'll ask it to explain something to me or how I can do something. I'm like, I have no idea what you're saying. Can you please dumb this down? Like, talk to me like I'm five.
Yeah, I often will say, I don't even know what that is. When it tells me to change something, like, and in this group of whatever, I'm like, I really don't even know what that is.
Yeah, give it
You're
to
gonna,
me so I can copy and paste it and
yeah,
tell me if it's good. Pretty amazing, right? Like, so I just wanted to highlight that because you do not need to know how to code. You do not need to do any of this stuff. You can just ask ChatGPT,
yeah,
and you don't have to, you can save that mental real estate capacity for something that, maybe the creative elements that maybe you're struggling with, at least you can dedicate or allocate more brain power that way.
yeah,
And let the robots do the robot things, right?
yeah.
That said, we kind of just touched on a potential, tribulation here. It was an arduous process. You were saying like to set these things up. Would you consider that one of the biggest ones, or what were the biggest struggles you ran into, and what did you do to overcome?
The biggest struggle has been that things took off and did very well. And they haven't been terrible, but they haven't had the same trajectory. And, sales decreased. And I, kept saying, I don't know what I'm going to do if that happens because I don't really know what I did to make it work. So I don't really know for sure how to keep it going. But negotiating that, part of what has helped is to diversify, which with a business I had previously, I had a consultant who was always saying, you need to diversify, you need to diversify. And I didn't. And it was the big lesson was I didn't diversify. That business suffered. Everything went under. And so as soon as I felt comfortable doing that, I was able to diversify somewhat. And that has made a big difference. So now there are two different there's more legs on the chair than there were before.
Yeah, yeah. So something gives out. I totally get that analogy. Something gives out, you're still got the support there. That's awesome. Really good analogy, actually. Ugly chair, probably, but
Yes.
a really good analogy. So you said you diversified. So that enter Shopify, that was new of this year.
Shopify and some Amazon stuff, which
Awesome.
has been far more predictable and methodical, like much slower, but much more steady, I guess.
Predictability is awesome, right? Whenever you have a little bit of slice of that. Is that Amazon merch?
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So before you added more legs to the chair, what you neglected to do in a business tanked, was there something at this point where you said in your POD journey this year that this might not work? Was there a point where you almost like threw in the towel or thought, this isn't going to work?
Honestly, I didn't. I really feel like in not every business, but in a lot of businesses that you can kind of get them up by sheer force of will. You just need to learn more and do more. Other people can be successful at stuff, at the same thing. And so you can as well. You just need to figure out the right way to do it and what's going to work for you. And so I always felt like there was still, and I also, it hadn't been a very long time. As long as there's like a taste of something positive in there, I can work with that.
Well, that's such a good, point too, because mindset, I think, is paramount. And if you like, I see it all the time. Like people will rave about this amazing review, and then 30 seconds later, oh my God, my view counts are down. It's horrible. Or I just had my best week ever, and then today they've got terrible views, and that's just overrun anything positive that they've ever done, and like up until this point. And it's just funny how, like you're saying, if there's a glimmer of anything positive, that's what you got to kind of hang on to. And I think it's just a testament to like the brute force thing is like you can't go into a business with one foot in the I think this is going to fail kind of pool, right? You have to give it, give it your all. Otherwise, you're setting yourself up for failure. There's a part of your brain that's always going to be holding you back, and that is the comfort zone, and it's everything we know, and our brains are designed to keep us safe. And if you can't negotiate or compartmentalize that, then it just doesn't work, right? Because you're always going to be wondering what if, and you're always going to have this kind of glass ceiling that you can't move past because you don't feel like it's actually tangible.
Yeah. And like, but my sales goals are usually commensurate with that. It's like, well, I just want something to improve. I really don't, doesn't really matter what. I don't need to set a goal of a certain dollar amount. If an average order value increases, that's good enough. If a conversion value even stays the same, it's good enough. It's whatever it is that it's progress. And as long as there's progress, you're moving forward.
It's like that analogy of 1% better every day, right? You're not like moving mountains overnight, right? Or eating the elephant, right? One bite at a time. What would you say is one of the biggest mistakes that you might see if they just knew better, they could totally avoid?
Making everything. That's one of the other reasons why I don't do research by looking at other people's shirts, because I want to make them or make something like that. And that's not what I sell. And it's hard when there's no data to find what it is that you want to do, or what it is that will work. But once you do, stop doing other things. If people will buy this one idea, make more of that idea, and you don't have to make everything that other people are selling. You need to make what you're selling.
Speak to your own people, make what you know you can. And I think, like you love dogs. It's a beautiful thing when you can kind of do something you enjoy at least, because brute force is one thing to, put in the reps and just do more of the same. But if you don't at least somewhat like it, I think it becomes a chore a lot faster. And then if it doesn't work, then you get resentful You know what I mean? But
Yeah,
if you enjoy what you're making, at least somewhat, I mean, you got a couple of dogs, it sounds like, so, or a bunch of dogs at one point.
bunch of dogs.
So it's like the inspiration when it's something in your immediate surroundings, that inspiration's never not there, right? Like you're always going to see something and think, oh, that'd be a funny shirt or whatever. And then Chat GPT in the end, if you're stuck. If you're comfortable, can we pry into what your numbers look like? Because I know you were saying like October sucks right now. But then you quickly followed that up opposite of what most people do, like, oh, it's awesome, and now everything sucks. You led before we, started recording this with October sucks, but when I look back, it's not so bad. Can you kind of give us a recap of what that was?
Well, it's because I've diversified, and October has sucked, and I've only sold about $4,000 worth of stuff. But I've done that in each store. And so if I can just keep the same trajectory going through the rest of October or the second half of October in both stores, then that will be 16,000 for October, which is more than my best months have been by far.
That's amazing. You've gone from like $1,000 in January to 16,000, and we're only halfway, well, trajectory for,
Yeah.
16,000 in October, and we're only halfway there. And I can tell you that if you're at 8,000 now, so you're saying what, 4,000 Etsy, 4,000 Shopify?
Hmm.
From my experience, if you're there now, you're going to have a better than $16,000 October, right? The second half now going forward, as we get closer to the pop off in November, I mean, it's just going to increase. So I'm stoked to see your numbers, and I am rooting for a 20K October for you. It sounds like it's
Great.
out of reach right now, but realistically speaking, if not October, it's definitely going to be in November. So pretty special. What would you say are two big differences with Shopify and Etsy, for example, for anyone out there looking or interested in, eyeballing one versus the other?
Don't do Shopify until you have time for it, until you've made room for it. It is a huge undertaking and it's expensive and it's really rewarding, but you're responsible for everything. And so, like I messed up my shipping. And so September's, everything fell apart because I forgot to double check one thing. And every time I go to check my website, I find another problem that I've made, something that I thought was there. I came back a month later, it's not there. It doesn't work. And it's all my responsibility to take care of and to figure that out. Well, I'd rather be doing other stuff, like thinking of more dogs. Um, it's also fabulous because it's very separate audience from Etsy. And I found that things I think should sell will sell. Whereas with Etsy, you don't have everybody in the world. You have Etsy shoppers. And so you have to resonate with Etsy shoppers and Etsy's algorithm.
Would you say then that how costly everything can be without, knowing what you're doing ultimately? Would you recommend Etsy, I guess, for starters?
Absolutely. You can get really far. You can go as, you can do incredibly well with Etsy and not need to do anything else. It's 20 cents to just try it. You can start with just an idea and 20 cents. The absolute cheapest way, I think, most affordable way to hone a niche. You can't, I mean, trying to do that with Facebook ads, the trial and error that's involved would be so expensive.
So then, too niche or not too niche?
Can there be a not niching? You have to.
I couldn't agree more, but at the same time, this is Liz's experience and Liz's opinion here. So yeah, I mean, I feel like if you're not niched, you are giving yourself so much more work, and it's going to take you forever and a day to get to where you are. You're sure as hell not going to have, the first 8.5 months of the year hitting 100,000 when you are scattered. You know what I mean? You can by brute force, but you're going to need thousands of listings. That said, how many listings do you have in your Etsy shop and how many do you have in your Shopify shop?
About 500 in my Etsy shop, although I don't know that they count as individuals because I have a design idea and then I do it in different breeds. So as far as design ideas go, there's maybe 100.
When you went to Shopify, did you take your best sellers? What was the strategy?
I did. I started with only stuff that had sold on Etsy and moved it over, but it ends up becoming such a different thing.
This is a ton of value. If you guys are watching this and you get any kind of value, please hit that like button down below and subscribe. Definitely want to have, more members success stories on. I think it's just amazing shares for everybody. Somebody watching this and they're grinding and grinding to hit their first like 1,000 or even 10K maybe. What advice would you give them?
do something different. Do I think most of the time that people aren't gaining any traction, it's because they think by changing a word in a design that that's all that they brought something new, but to do something that you haven't seen before, take ideas that you have seen and make them with something that you haven't seen.
This is going to be a piggyback question, but I know people are right now thinking like, how the hell am I supposed to think of something that I haven't seen? Is there a method to the madness? Like, how do you, not just asking ChatGPT, or is that as easy as it needs to be?
Well, the abstract floral design of things, I love this. And I wanted to do it with dogs. I couldn't come up with anything for it. I tried all sorts of different ways of doing dogs that way. I made a bunch of shirts in January. I made a bunch of shirts for dogs with the abstract floral design. None of them sold. That's okay, but nobody else was doing that. It was difficult to put together, but I just took the idea of dogs, which is the niche I make stuff in, and tried to make it into something very different with an aesthetic that I like.
Yeah, that's good advice. Your successes and your failures, and something that kind of, flipped the switch. Is there something you wish you had done sooner?
I wish I had stopped making stuff that I liked sooner. I like a lot of the stuff that I make, but I don't, it's not necessarily something that I would buy. It's something that other people buy. And I still like how it looks and I still have fun with it. But the things that I like didn't sell.
It's a hard bullet to bite, but what we like doesn't matter, right? Our opinions do not matter. There's all kinds of tools out there. You got the E-ranks, the Everbees as far as data goes. You've got literal numbers in red on every listing telling you how many things are in carts. There's so much data out there that you can easily validate demand without even having created something yet. So if you're thinking of doing something, I think I would suggest maybe, looking for it on the platform you intend to sell on. If there's any out there, are they getting sales? Right. And I mean, that's all there is to it. And I think if you can create better version and mash up two things that in your case, for example, that isn't already out there, and find those gaps and fill them based on previous sales history, I think it seems like such an easy recipe, but what's your thoughts, sir?
But I don't know if people that are unskilled like myself with design, I don't know that it's as easy. I think it's a difficult hill to climb if you don't know anything about climbing it. And it feels very clunky and awkward to try to put things together that, like how do you make up something that you've never seen before when you've never seen it? But once you do, when you see something, you know that it's the right thing.
Yeah, when it clicks, and it's hard to explain until it clicks. When it does click, it's like, how did I not see this before? Right? It's like one of those
Yeah.
aha moments. Talking about inspiration and mindset here, because your story is like super inspiring to tons of people out there. I can't wait to see your end of year numbers, by the way. But what's the maybe the biggest mindset shift that you had to make this year?
Actually, the big one was I've been very afraid all along. Like I was saying, I know the trajectory of in previous businesses of how to make it successful. And I really had no idea in doing this. And I was really afraid that it would just one day stop. I've always said, I know it's not realistic that today people don't like my things and yesterday they did, because that switch doesn't happen that quickly. But I was really afraid of a decrease in sales and really anxious about it because things can't be predictable in life. And when my sales did decrease, I was like, there, finally, now I don't have to be afraid of it. It's happened. And taking a bite of that sandwich is not the most pleasant one, but it's really important to be able to be like, fine, what I was afraid of happened. And now I can deal with it and I can stop being afraid of it.
So how do you keep yourself motivated when sales happen and you take a bite of that crap sandwich, for example?
Well, for one, I mean, it's just a day and some days are better than others. I really it doesn't take much for me to be optimistic about stuff. It's like, oh, look, somebody bought something that I thought was, they have great taste because that design came out perfect, and or something different has sold, or even if it's like it's the worst day since January and now it's over, like done with that part and we can move on.
I like that you anticipate. So I like anticipating the valleys and the Q1s of the world, for example. There's the first quarter, for those who don't know. It's like typically the slowest time of the year, depending on what you're targeting. But if you know that these cyclically happen year after year. You can kind of work them into your process and use it as a time to kind of revisit old designs or rethink your branding. All those things that we kind of table while we create, right? You're looking at it in a way that this is just matter of fact, it's going to happen. You're not letting it in the same breath get you down, which I think is a unique take because a lot of people just say like what I just said, anticipate that it will happen, but don't focus on it. Meanwhile, you're kind of like almost half focused on it until it happens, and it's like one of those things that now you can move forward. You're using it as a step, which is a really it's a really unique take on that. I want to cap it off here with if you had to sum up the secret of your growth into one sentence, is that even possible? And if so, what would it be?
That's a bad one.
Nobody wants to hear it.
No, I
But
don't want to say it.
it's
But
real work, right?
well, it's also, like if I'm upset about sales or whatever and roadblocks or things not working well, the answer to that for me is to work harder because you get, this anxious energy or whatever, and you can direct it somewhere. I mean, it's useful. You just direct it somewhere. And so if I'm afraid of things going poorly, then I work harder. And if I'm happy about things going well, then I work harder. Feel like I'm accomplishing something either way.
And you're not going down the echo chamber rabbit holes that is just more of people griping about low sales or videos and this and that, right? Like you're literally going back to the drawing board and making more of what you know works because
Yeah.
once things shift, you've got a bunch of new listings in there that are going to sell, right?
And how do you increase your sales? You make some more designs. So you just do more.
One last thing, actually. I know I said last thing last time, but on the do more and work harder bit, can you tell us what kind of time you're putting into this? Like, has it changed since January to now?
It has. When I started to do the Shopify stuff, there was a dramatic increase in the amount of time that I spent because it was starting a whole second thing. I spend most of my time, I mean, I don't have another job. I spend most of my time working, although I don't in the evenings as much anymore. But usually I just, whenever I can, I do. All the there are dogs to take care of and there's stuff to do here and I'll run, but try now to take evenings off.
It sounds like you're treating it like a real job, a real business, and you're, making it a priority, right?
Well, I like doing it.
That's
You know,
huge. I love that you said that.
I love to work. I love to work. As an adult, I've never had a real job. I've always worked for myself. And I love all of the stuff. I do what I like. And so I do it a lot because I really enjoy it.
I feel the exact same. It's, sometimes it feels more like work than enjoyment, but at the end of the day, it's all like I am so privileged and I feel so good about being able to do what I enjoy. And even that's by osmosis now turned into helping other people do what I know how to do, which is pretty awesome. Liz, your story has been so inspiring. We're grateful to have you.
Thank you.
And I am so, so thankful that, to taking up so much of your time to share these valuable tips. I think so with people on the fence right now, you heard it from Liz, like stop putting it off, get in there, roll up the sleeves, get to work.
Work harder.
Work harder. Yeah, I love it. Thank you so much, Liz. It's been
Thank
awesome.
you.
And we'll see you later.